Looking for NFL football? Stop right here. You found your home for weekly NFL talk and fantasy football. Coming to you live from the BackupPunter.com. This is the Backup Punter Podcast. Now, here's your host, the man who thinks fullbacks win championships, Keegan Matheson.
What's up, everybody? Thank you for joining me. This is episode number 13 of the Backup Punter Podcast, and to celebrate the unlucky 13, we're going to talk about my favorite position on the football field, not named fullback. That's the tight end position. We're going to look at the fantasy football outlook for 2015, just like we've done over the last few weeks at quarterback, running back, wide receiver. I'm going to go through the guys that you're probably going to see leave your board, the different tiers you should rank them in, and then I'm going to give you some guys to love, to hate, and to keep an eye on. I love the tight end position. It's one that really can separate you. The difference between a Gronkowski at number 1 and a guy at number 10 at tight end is an ocean. Where at running back and wide receiver, the 1 to 10, not so much. So this is a really fun one to dig into. Now, as always, the Backup Punter Podcast is brought to you by the good people at DynastySportsEmpire.com Fantasy Sports. So whether it's NFL, NBA, NHL, or MLB baseball, DynastySportsEmpire.com has got you covered. Check them out on Twitter at DSE_football to join a Dynasty Fantasy Football Startup League today. The leagues start at $50. Look into that. It's all the fun you can have playing fantasy. Now to check me out on Twitter, find me at the Backup Punter, thebackupunter.com to check some weekly articles. There hasn't been too much up lately, but I promise I'll turn into more of a giver over the coming weeks as OTAs, minicamps really pick up and we can get past all of this sleeper, breakout player type news, which really does drive me nuts. And on Facebook, check out the Backup Punter Facebook page. I'll pump all those articles right into your news feed. I won't put you through the daunting task of typing other things in other web browsers. I care about you. So today, it's about tight ends. And tight end is a position that has long haunted me. And I will preface this discussion with a story of how my tight end position went last year in one of my 2 leagues. You'll always hear me reference my 2 leagues. I've got 2 leagues that are serious. They're at least 5 years old. I care about them as much as I care for most people in my life. They are serious. Now, in this one league, I missed out on the elite options, which probably half of you listening are going to do this year. Odds are you're going to miss out on Gronkowski. You're going to miss out on Jimmy Graham, Kelce, Greg Olsen, and you're going to have to find that guy. That's what happened to me last year, and I drafted Charles Clay of the Miami Dolphins. And initially I was pretty happy with it. I reached for him a bit, but tight end is a position I'm okay with you reaching at, because you need to get a guy at this position. You can find running backs, wide receivers in week 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Not so much with tight ends. So I was happy to start the year with Charles Clay. Injuries happen, performance happens, and he goes down. I ride him through the year, I streamed a couple of guys. And then later in the year, I got the idea, well, let me just buy low on a guy on the trade market. Someone in my team still had Vernon Davis rostered. Vernon Davis had roughly 1 catch for 0 yards last year. Horrible year. But it was getting to that point in the year where they were doing poorly, and I thought, you know what? Maybe I'll just buy low on Vernon Davis. So I traded a scrub running back that I added off of free agency. And I got Vernon Davis. Idiotic move in retrospect, but it didn't cost me anything. He didn't work out for me. Later on in the season, when Kyle Rudolph came off of injured reserve, I added Kyle Rudolph. He didn't give me anything. So at the time, they weren't genius moves, but looking at that, Charles Clay, Vernon Davis, Kyle Rudolph, these are good tight ends. Those are tight ends that would be ranked in that 6 to 12 range that you might have to pick. Vernon Davis, not so much this year. We'll get into him later. But those were tight ends that at the time weren't ridiculous options. And still, I struggled through the year. So that's why, just turn the podcast off if you're in any of my leagues right now, but that's why this year I'm going to have to reach for a tight end. I need a little bit of security. And what I like about the tight end position too is that this might be the position that I circle back around and grab in round 14 and 15. A second guy. Unless I get my Gronkowski, my Graham, I'm going to circle back for a second tight end, I think, in this year's draft. Because having a guy at tight end is just so freaking valuable. Now, when we talk about it today, like I've said the last few weeks, we're using the ESPN top 300 rankings. Not because they're the best, not because they're the most accurate, not because they're going to be accurate on draft day, but because I think they're probably just the most common rankings. It's the most tidy way for us to discuss this. So that's what we're going to do. And before we really dive into tight ends, I wanted to give you another anecdote that I remembered this week about one of my drafts last year. And it really highlights for me why it's almost funny that we spend all offseason. Well, it's funny that we spend any time talking about fantasy football. It's made up. Stand back from it and think about it. It's really kind of hilarious. But this story really highlights how little we know. We don't know a damn thing about fantasy football. We might think we do, but we don't. So to set the scene, this was in another one of my two leagues here. And this is an 8-person league. Some friends and I, years ago when we went off to college, we started this league. And it's gone for 5, 6, 7 years now. It's only 8 of us, but we have really large rosters. So you have the same amount of total rostered players that you'd probably have in a 12-man league. We had 6 keepers. I only chose to keep 5 keepers, which gave me the first overall pick before everyone else. So that's all the busy details. Moral of the story here, with that first overall pick, I had the choice between Le'Veon Bell and Zach Stacy. They were ranked right next to each other. I think Bell was ranked 1 above Zach Stacy. Keep in mind that this is, before 2014, this is coming off a year where Zach Stacy came out of nowhere and really thrived on the St. Louis Rams. People thought he might turn into that workhorse back. And Le'Veon Bell had been a high pick, but he didn't come close to showing what he did in 2014. He didn't show that in his rookie year. He wasn't that elite receiving back. His patience was resulting in losses of yardage, not brilliant runs. And in retrospect, you're probably laughing thinking about this. But the fact is, if I had have selected Zach Stacy there, nobody would have blinked an eye. Le'Veon Bell and Zach Stacy at that time caused me to have a bit of a problem. Now, I picked Le'Veon Bell at the last minute. I talked myself out of Zach Stacy. And as you all know, I'm someone who gets a little too personally involved with my fantasy teams, which makes it all the more ridiculous. And at that time, I just didn't like Le'Veon Bell, the person, too much. I don't think he's much of a literary scholar, but he's grown on me. I love you, Le'Veon. But I was inches away from picking Zach Stacy. So look at that in retrospect. What's that going to mean this year? Zach Stacy literally might not touch a football field this year. And after week 3, when Le'Veon Bell returns, he's got every opportunity to be the most valuable fantasy football player. That's how far to the extremes these things can go. So, next time you are in the mid-rounds and you're about to guess between 2 players, just keep in mind that it could make or break your fantasy team for years to come. Just keep that in mind. It'll keep you calm. So let's get in to tight ends. And we'll run right through these. We'll keep it to a short, little bite-sized podcast today before we come back with some OTA minicamp news next week. Now, looking at ESPN's rankings, of course, I'm not going to put out my rankings till early August, late July. Looking at these rankings, I want to split the top guys into 3 different tiers. And I think I only split up about 9 guys here, but just to give you some real tiers to start out with. The number 1 tier is Rob Gronkowski, and Rob Gronkowski alone. He is in a league of his own, no matter how much you hear that storyline beat into the ground. He just simply is the best at his position. There's no room for argument like there is at running back. Gronkowski is the best. Last year, 82 catches, 1,124 yards, 12 scores. And I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to hurt Gronkowski. Jimmy Garoppolo came from a passing game in college where he relied on rhythm. Drop back, 1, 2, 3, read, throw. Drop back, 1, 2, 3, make a read, release the football. That's going to work just fine with Rob Gronkowski. That's why I think Julian Edelman will do fine out of the gates too. because they run those short routes that Garoppolo is going to see early on in his rhythm. He's also got a great deep ball if Gronkowski wants to stretch that seam, but I don't think Garoppolo is going to be a problem at all for his value. In fact, I don't think it is going to have any impact whatsoever. So Gronkowski, along with, I think I listed 11 receivers and 11 running backs that I consider must draft in the top 2 rounds of a 12-leaguer. You know, those elite guys that you got to get. Add Gronkowski to that to make it 23. That's why everyone is fearing having the number 1 overall pick in straight redraft leagues with no keepers, because you get the number 1 pick, but by the time you get around to 24, those best 23 players might be gone. So it's kind of a woe is me, how terrible my life is that I have the first overall pick, but it's one of those storylines that's popping up a lot lately. Now the second tier, I won't name them, I won't try to, but tier number 2, I've got 4 guys here, and these are guys that are obviously must draft, duh, but these are guys who are going to be your above average guys. You're going to win the tight end battle every week with these guys. And in no particular order, we'll start with Jimmy Graham. Now, he's with the Seahawks now. I don't like the trade particularly, but you can't fault the Seahawks for going for it. Just really trying to get that elite weapon, which they did get. Now, for whatever stupid reason, knocking Jimmy Graham has become the hot take of the week. And every radio show, podcast, TV show I've watched about fantasy football, it's, people think that they're being edgy and so against the grain with this groundbreaking theory that Jimmy Graham won't be good in Seattle. And shut up. It gets a bit old. He's not going to be the New Orleans Saints Jimmy Graham, because those are significantly different teams. This is not an offense that's going to be hitting him 40 or 50 yards downfield. Instead of catching a ball 30 yards in the air from Drew Brees, he's going to catch it 10 yards in the air from Russell Wilson, and the rest of the yardage is going to be up to him. Maybe Marshawn Lynch doesn't go full beast mode this year. And that's what I want to mention about Jimmy Graham. I hate to say it, Lynch is one of my favorite guys in this league, one of my favorite to ever play the running back position. But if he gets an injury, if he regresses, which is possible at his age, then the heart of the field is all Jimmy Graham's. Even if Marshawn Lynch is on a tear, that means there's 7-8 men in the box and no one's really looking over the heart of the field at Graham. All eyes on Marshawn Lynch. Look in the red zone. Who do they have? They got Baldwin, Curse, Tyler Lockett. These guys that are fantastic receivers. I like them. I love Lockett. You know that already. But they're not big. Stick Jimmy Graham on the outside, run that little fade route. He'll probably be all alone if Marshawn Lynch is in the backfield sucking in the safeties. There's a lot they can do here. He will not be the New Orleans Jimmy Graham. Last year he had 85 receptions, 889 yards, 10 touchdowns. Wasn't always healthy, but, he probably won't put up those numbers. I don't even know if he'll be my number 2 tight end when I do my rankings. But this is Jimmy Graham. Just step down off your soapbox about trying to point out who's going to be bad this year and just draft the guy. Don't draft him too high, though. This is Jimmy Graham. It's one of these people where you'll see an idiot like me who will draft Larry Fitzgerald in a draft, something like that. But Jimmy Graham is now a player, and I always want you to think of this. Jimmy Graham is a player whose name is more valuable than his fantasy production. Kind of like Tom Brady. People draft Tom Brady really high, even though he's really just an 8th or 10th best fantasy quarterback. Your friends who maybe aren't really into the NFL, who just, kind of said, hey, I'll join your league, they're probably going to grab a Jimmy Graham really early, because they might not even know he's on the Seahawks. So set your value with Graham, but if he meets your value, don't be afraid to pull the trigger. Don't listen to the doubters. Also in this tier, I have Greg Olsen. He does not get the love he deserves. Fantastic tight end in Carolina. I don't think Devin Funchess is going to do a thing to take away from his targets. Not whatsoever. Last year, 84 receptions, 1,008 yards, 6 touchdowns. I think that 6 touchdowns could move up, couldn't it? Why not 8, 9, 10? I think it absolutely could, especially if Cam Newton's healthy, if that run game gets going with Jonathan Stewart. Travis Kelce of the Kansas City Chiefs. This is a guy that has a chance to take over number 2 in my rankings. 67 receptions last year for 862 and 5 touchdowns. So you see, he's producing big plays. If memory serves, he was third in the league last year among tight ends for plays of 20 yards or more, behind only Rob Gronkowski and Coby Fleener. I think we can discount that Coby Fleener as a bit of an outlier. Love Fleener, but that's not really him. Not that much, at least. But Travis Kelce is a big play guy. What's encouraging to me is that all the buzz out of Chiefs camp right now is that they are going to push the ball down the field more. Well, enter Travis Kelce. And I think Andy Reid is finally going to take off the kid gloves when he's handling Kelce. It was strange to watch last year. There were times where Kelce wouldn't even be on the field when he was obviously, clearly, everybody on planet Earth and some people outside of it knew that Travis Kelce was their top receiver. Jeremy Maclin is just one guy. He's a great guy, but at one receiver. That's not going to take away enough targets to ruin Kelce's value. So I absolutely love Kelce. If I had a chance to draft him, I'd do it 10 times out of 10. And to round out the second tier, Martellus Bennett of the Bears. I'm not wild about him. I don't know if he'll put up a 90-catch, 916-yard, and 6 touchdown season. He's got some room to grow in touchdowns there. And of course, Brandon Marshall's replaced by Kevin White, so there may be some targets to go around. But this team is going to probably be playing comeback in a lot of games. The Bears' D isn't fantastic. They're going to have to throw the ball. Martellus Bennett doesn't have a huge ceiling, and there is some risk because he's had those dud years before. But if you can get him at the value you feel comfortable with, then more weeks than not, you're going to win the tight end matchup. And then the third tier, these are guys that are must roster guys. You know, there's going to be other guys that are roster, but these are the guys that have to be on your roster. Well, not your roster, on somebody's roster in a 12-team league. First guy, again, this is no particular order. First guy's Antonio Gates, and I'm nervous to have him on here. I'm very nervous. And I'm sick of hearing the Ladarius Green is due for a breakout season for the 12th straight. Whatever he does, he does. Antonio Gates, 69 catches, 821 yards, and 12 scores last year. This dude is not getting 12 touchdowns this year. If he does, I'll turn this podcast into a video podcast, and I will eat my own shoe on the show. So somebody write that down. Antonio Gates has to slow down eventually. I know he's one of these guys like a Jeter. You know, he's the Jeter type that just doesn't really slow down because he's so intelligent. And he's not a guy that needs to run a 4.5 to succeed. He boxes guys out, runs great routes. So maybe we see 55 or 60 catches, 700 yards, and 5 or 6 touchdowns. He's going to be one of those bottom tier guys that someone's going to have on a roster. You're going to need to. So keep an eye on him. Next guy is Julius Thomas, now with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Big year last night with the Denver Broncos, but there is a difference between Blake Bortles and Peyton Manning, believe it or not. The difference, if you're sitting home asking why, is that Blake Bortles is not as talented at throwing footballs as the greatest quarterback of all time. And I do worry about his moving to play with Blake Bortles because, Bortles, he gets the benefit of the doubt, kind of like a Carr in Oakland. They weren't very good, but they get a free pass because their teams are really terrible right now. Both going in the right direction, though, and I really believe in both. But how much work is Thomas going to get? How many times are the Jaguars going to be close enough to the red zone to use him? Can he be a guy that contributes between the 20-yard lines? You know, he's a red zone monster. He'll get you touchdowns, but can he make that 20-yard reception, make somebody miss? He's got to prove it. Another guy I like is Zach Ertz in Philadelphia. This is an offense that I don't like a lot fantasy-wise, not because it's not going to do well, but just because it's a bit unpredictable. It's almost like very different, but a little bit like the Patriots style, where you don't know who to play because if you play LeGarrette Blount, then you get another running back come out of nowhere and ruin your week. A little similar in Philly. You don't know where the ball is going, but I think the most likely place for the ball to go consistently is Zach Ertz. I think Chip Kelly is going to use that guy, and if the value matches up, I'd love to draft him. And the last guy you've got to have on a roster somewhere in your league is Jason Witten. Now, there's not much competition for targets in Dallas, Des Bryant being the only guy, so it's not like he's behind 4 or 5 receiving options. DeMarco Murray's gone this year, so there's not going to, I don't think there's going to be that 1,800-yard rusher that catches 50 balls. There's going to be some short yardage work available for Witten. Over the past 6-8 years, I don't think there's been a tight end, maybe Antonio Gates, but outside of that has been more consistent than Witten. Jason Witten's the guy that you draft if you miss out on all the top guys and you just hit a point where you think, you know what? Just let me break even. Let me keep a cap on my tight end play every week. Let me get 6 or 8 points, and I will win it elsewhere. And Witten is a great pick to do that. And I don't argue against that strategy. If you're picking a guy like Witten, though, again, that's where you got to circle back in round 14, 15. Grab yourself that absolute shot in the dark. But if that guy doesn't work out, Jason Witten is going to be absolutely fine for you. And my name's Keegan Matheson. We're here talking about tight ends on the Backup Punter podcast. Follow along on Twitter at the Backup Punter. And send in your questions. Next week, we're going to be talking about some storylines that are coming out of mini camps, OTAs. It's all hype right now. Think about your favorite team. Every story you're hearing is, this guy's going to have a breakout season. This player looks better this year. Not a lot of negative because it's all put out by the team and it's all fluff. But we're going to talk about that. We're going to get into it. But send in your questions, whether it's about your team or about any of these fantasy football rankings. The different tiers, the different groups we've gone over the past month. It's going to be, it's June 16th as I record this on Tuesday, so it's going to be, within the next couple months, you're going to be drafting. A lot of people like to do that draft mid-August. Could be 2 months away. Got enough time to run about 100 mock drafts, I think, in between then. I know I will be. So send in your questions. If there's a sleeper you're looking for, one you want to ask about, or even if you've got a question about, hey, I'm in the first pick, who do I draft? I've got an opportunity to draft Jamal Charles or Eddie Lacy, who do I go with? I love to talk about that. So tweet in at the Backup Punter or email thebackupunter@gmail.com, and I'll be sure to feature it on the show. Now to close up our bite-sized show today, I'm going to go with just groups of 3. I went with the 5 receivers, quarterbacks, and running back that I love, hate, and want to watch. For tight end, it's a smaller position. I'll go with 3. Now, I want to start off with the 3 tight ends that I love. We're going to start positive here. Good vibes. And one tight end I love, in terms of value here, ESPN has 9th, Zach Ertz. I think Zach Ertz at number 9, if you can get him at the 8th or 9th tight end off your board, I think that's great value. If he's healthy, he has a legitimate opportunity to be the focal point of this offense. Yes, DeMarco Murray is going to get a ton of work. Even Ryan Matthews is going to get some of that short area work. But outside of Nelson Aguilar, Riley Cooper's nothing special. You've got Matthews on the outside. None of those are the Jeremy Maclin game breaker. Now, I'm a big believer in Matthews. I think he's going to be that 1,000 to 1,100 yard guy. But there is so much room here for Zach Ertz, especially if they stay in that hurry-up offense, quick-hitting passes. Zach Ertz is the closest receiver to the quarterback. I think he's going to see a lot of balls, and I think he has a high floor, which you like if you're drafting outside the top 5 tight ends. So I love Zach Ertz at 9. A couple deeper ones that I love. I'm going to get some flack for this. I don't care. Number 17 they have ranked. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes even lower than that. Austin Seferian-Jenkins of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Barely did a thing last year as a rookie, despite the hype around him. 21 catches, 221 yards. I wouldn't have done anything with that quarterback play either. That was a garbage team. Absolutely terrible. Enter Jameis Winston. Well, if Jameis Winston ever chooses to do an ounce of good in the world, it might as well be to the fantasy stock of Austin Seferian-Jenkins. As a rookie tight end, I think Jameis Winston will use Seferian-Jenkins because he has Mike Evans, Vincent Jackson to look to out wide. If they're not open, he can hit Jenkins. If they draw coverage out too far, Seferian-Jenkins is wide open in the middle. This is not a guy that's going to put up 1,000 yards, but he's a tight end that has a chance to go undrafted in your league. Maybe you grab him in the 15th round. Maybe you grab him off waivers after week 1. But I love tight ends that are on the same team as a rookie quarterback. Because the easiest way for a rookie to break into the NFL at QB is to hit that tight end. Move the chains. Tight ends and running backs. So that's one that, you know what, I probably will attack Austin Seferian-Jenkins in the last round of my draft, just to stalk him. That bottom guy on your roster that you're probably going to churn into waivers in a couple of weeks anyways. For me, that's Seferian-Jenkins. Again, if you're in one of my leagues, forget that I said that right now. Please and thank you. And the last guy, returning to my old flame from last year, ESPN has ranked number 20, Charles Clay. Now, I know that he has a poor quarterback situation in Buffalo, but my thinking here is that I'd prefer a tight end with a bad quarterback to a wide receiver with a bad quarterback. A guy like Sammy Watkins might be more affected by poor QB play than a guy like Charles Clay, because the passes he's catching won't have as far to travel through the air. Not as much room for error. It's a kind of a simplistic approach I take to this, but I think it's correct. And I think that Charles Clay can be much better than the 20th tight end. Give me a break. This guy had some good years in Miami. He's always kind of just been 90% of what he can be. He's athletic. The Bills made a move for this guy, a bold one. They didn't do that just to leave him out there as a decoy. He's going to see the football. I think he's going to see it a lot. I think Rex Ryan is going to use Charles Clay. And this is another one of those guys. If he goes undrafted, keep an eye on him. But I love that value. Number 20, Charles Clay. I'm probably going to trade for another 15th round pick just to take him. I'll build an all tight end team. It'll be really gritty. Now, 3 guys I hate that I don't actually hate and I would still very much like to do dinner with, but I don't like their value. And number 1 and number 2, they're a package deal. Dwayne Allen of the Colts at number 10 and Coby Fleener of the Colts at number 21. I'm a little confused at, how large that gap is. I thought they'd be a little bit closer, maybe something like a 14 and 18. Now, Dwayne Allen is definitely set to be an option above Coby Fleener. Coby Fleener filled in for the injured Dwayne Allen last year, put up some big numbers, but Coby Fleener's 2014 season needs to be the topic of a master's thesis. You'd watch Colts games and he would be wide open. He's not a tremendous athlete. Love Coby Fleener. Great hair. But he was really just left alone. It was funny sometimes. But he earned the production. He did. Won't be as high this year, of course. And overall, as members of the Colts, well, now you've got Frank Gore there. You've got Andre Johnson, Dante Moncrief, Daron Carter, T.Y. Hilton, Philip Dorsett. The amount of names I'm saying is not good. There are going to be so many options for Andrew Luck. So many options. Now, Dwayne Allen or Coby Fleener, if you're getting one of those guys, you're hoping that they kind of break even on yardage and make their money with touchdowns. You're hoping they get that 500, 600, 700 yards receiving, but get you a big number, touchdown scores. My thing is, with those two, there are going to be weeks where you guess on the wrong one. You've got Fleener in the lineup, and Allen goes off. You've got Allen, and it goes to Fleener. The touchdown pass goes to Fleener that week. It's just one of those frustrating situations where neither one of them are horrific value. You're still okay with them. But why take on a gamble like that when you can go for someone like a Jason Witten at number 8 instead of going for Allen at 10? When you can get a Zach Ertz at 9. Why leave yourself with a position that does have some variables? I don't like that strategy, so I'm going to stay away from those guys. Another guy I don't like, who is ranked 13 by ESPN and will probably go higher in your league, is Josh Hill of the New Orleans Saints. Now, of course, with Jimmy Graham gone, the fantasy football people inside of us look for who's the next tight end up. Well, it's Josh Hill. Last year, he had 14 receptions, 176 yards, and 5 touchdowns. He even got some fantasy rumble last year because he was almost this touchdown specialist. They'd run these designed plays to him where he'd be wide open and kind of stumble in. This guy is not Jimmy Graham. He has not, he's a completely different athlete. And calling him an athlete is a bit of a stretch itself. He's a catch it and fall down tight end, which is fine in real football. But we are talking about fantasy made-up football that only exists on the internet. So we have to talk about it differently. Josh Hill could easily put up maybe 500 yards this year, but he's not going to catch a touchdown every third pass. There's going to be someone in your league, and always look out for players like this. There's someone in your league is going to think that they're the genius here. Somebody in your league is going to see Josh Hill and think, oh my God, the guys in my league don't know what I'm about to drop on them. I'm about to get Jimmy Graham's replacement in that offense, and I'm about to blow this league up. Just let them do it, because they're going to do it too early. Josh Hill could absolutely have a fine year, maybe creak into the back end of a top 12, top 14 tight end. But again, around that play, why wouldn't you take Charles Clay over Josh Hill? I would. Let me know if you disagree with that at the Backup Punter on Twitter, but I would. I really want to hear some reaction to Josh Hill this week, because I don't think the Saints offense is the same offense that you are picturing with Jimmy Graham in it. It's a different scheme. I know that Graham leaves a lot of targets, but Brandon Cooks is back. CJ Spiller is going to get a boatload of targets. A boatload. I'm not sure which number is assigned to a boatload, and I'm not sure how long it has been since human beings moved quantities of things by boat with frequency. But it's going to be a boatload of targets. And I don't think Josh Hill does enough. Now we're going to close this off with 3 tight ends that I'm going to be watching leading up to the draft. And as a special bonus for sticking it through this last 31 minutes, I'm going to give you 4. Now these are guys that are dangling between my love and hate. And I think it's more likely that they trip onto my love list. But let's look at it. Number 11. On one of my favorite offenses in the league, it's Jordan Cameron of the Miami Dolphins. He signed with Miami this year. He's had some serious concussion issues in the past when he was playing with the Browns. I've got this fear, much like Wes Welker, that he is one hit to the head away from a scary injury and perhaps a career-threatening concussion. But looking at him as he is right now, I think he is a great option. Not an elite one, but if you get him around the 10th, 12th guy, there's going to be a lot of targets taken away by Devontae Parker, Jarvis Landry, Kenny Stills. God help me, but maybe Greg Jennings will see 2 targets this year. But outside of Parker, Jordan Cameron would be their number 1 red zone threat. Real good size mismatch, can control the middle of the field. He and Jarvis Landry will do great together. I want to see how he fits in that offense, because Ryan Tannehill, he does like those quick rhythm throws, that Bill Lazor offense. So that's something to watch through minicamp, OTAs. Stay curious about Jordan Cameron. Google his name every Monday. Something like that, but keep your finger to the pulse on that one. Because if he tips in the right direction, could be a very valuable pick for you, because he's a great athlete. He has the potential to be a top 5 tight end. It's one of these 5% potentials, but it exists. Another guy I will be watching, this goes back to my thinking with Austin Seferian-Jenkins, the number 12 ranked guy, Delaney Walker. He's got Marcus Mariota there, with Marcus Mariota being mobile behind the line of scrimmage. Really not an incredible wide receiving core. You know, Dorial Green-Beckham is the big new name. He's really not going to do too much. Kendall Wright, these type guys, Justin Hunter. There's not really a star. There's not a stud. It's not like Andrew Luck walking in and having Reggie Wayne, just that Mr. Reliable guy. Why not the tight end? While Marcus Mariota builds his throwing skill, while he builds his ability to run this offense, why not the tight end? Delaney Walker. That's another one of those guys, if he's undrafted, probably make him one of the first guys you do pick up if your late round tight end does not work out. And I like Delaney Walker this year. Number 22, a guy that he's a hot sleeper name, Eric Ebron. He was a high pick of the Detroit Lions a year ago. He did not impress as a rookie at all. But this guy is as physically talented as pretty much any tight end in this league. Size, speed, but he needs to be able to run those routes. He needs to build that trust with Matt Stafford. If he can do it, well, there's Calvin Johnson, there's Golden Tate. While that does mean some targets are going away, well, hell, it also means that some coverage is going away. Could Eric Ebron be a great red zone threat this year? A lot of times last year it looked like they were forcing him the ball, trying to justify that draft pick, but you don't draft a guy that high and give up on him in a year. I'm really, really going to be monitoring Eric Ebron's situation through mini camps, through training camp. That might be a guy that by the time my August rankings roll around, I'll probably be telling you to draft that guy in the last round as a flyer. He could be a great flyer. And then, prepare your groans. And this is me again. You notice a theme the last few weeks. I keep coming back to the same players that burned me the year before. ESPN has Vernon Davis ranked 26th. And I have an issue with that. Is he a top 10 tight end? God, no. No longer. That ship has sailed. But hear me out here. Vernon Davis will be healthy this year. The San Francisco 49ers will be a worse team this year. They've lost Davis. They've lost Iapati. They've lost Frank Gore. They've lost Michael Crabtree. But that running game is not going to be what it was last year. I think their defense is going to be much worse than it was last year. And I think that the San Francisco 49ers are going to be playing comeback every other week, which means Colin Kaepernick is going to be forced to throw his way back into football games. Number one, I'm thrilled because watching that is going to be absolutely hilarious because Colin Kaepernick won't be able to do it. But number two, I think that when Kaepernick is really forced with, if he's down by 15 at halftime and he has to throw his way back into the game, he's going to go back to the man who made him rich. As a young quarterback, Colin Kaepernick relied heavily on Vernon Davis. If Vernon Davis can even operate at 75% of his old self, he's going to get some targets in the open field. He might not turn them upfield like he used to, but he's going to get a lot of looks because Colin Kaepernick is going to lean on his tight end because he is really quite poor at progressing through his outside reads. Once he catches a couple defensive ends on the chin, he's going to start looking over the heart of the field again. Should you draft Vernon Davis? No, you should not. Should you keep him in mind? Absolutely. I think Vernon Davis is one of those guys that I'm going to be watching in week one very closely. I almost hope that in week one, I hope that the Niners do have to play comeback because then we'll really see what this offense is about. Yeah, you'll have Reggie Bush on the field scatting around. You'll have Ellington out there. You'll have Torrey Smith, Anquan Bolden, who is the best player on planet Earth. If you don't like Anquan Bolden, you do not like football. That's a man. But I'm interested as hell to see Vernon Davis. I wouldn't be surprised if sometime this year I tell you to add him. So that is my love, hate, and watch list for tight ends. You can go back through the podcast on iTunes, after you subscribe to it, of course, on iTunes, and you can listen to the past few weeks. I've gone through quarterbacks, wide receivers, and running backs. Now tight ends. And this isn't to rank them all. This is a primer, we'll call it. Just so you're not going into the offseason still in the mindset of last season. It's good to start fresh, hit the restart button, and say, okay, this is the 2015 football season. Kickoff is under 100 days away, and we're looking forward instead of looking back to the season and the draft and the free agency that was. So tweet into the show at The Backup Punter. Like it on Facebook, The Backup Punter. Check out thebackupunter.com and the YouTube channel where I will be posting the podcast. So thank you again for checking out the Backup Punter podcast. I do appreciate it wherever you are in the world, and I'm getting listeners from all over. So thank you for your continued interest and your continued support, because it does truly mean a lot to me. So my name is Keegan Matheson, and I hope that all of your punts in life stop on the 1-yard line. Let's talk next week.